Strategic Leadership Analysis. Ibrahim Traoré's Development Framework for Burkina Faso. Executive Summary. Ibrahim Traoré's assumption of leadership in Burkina Faso represents a significant case study in contemporary African governance and economic transformation strategies. Since taking power in September 2022, the 36-year-old interim president has implemented a comprehensive development framework that challenges conventional approaches to post-conflict economic reconstruction. This analysis examines the strategic components, implementation challenges, and potential implications of Traoré's governance model within the broader context of African development policy. Introduction. Leadership context and regional significance. Burkina Faso's political transition under Captain Ibrahim Traoré occurs against a backdrop of significant regional instability and economic challenges. Burkina Faso ranked 134th out of 176 countries in the Heritage Foundation's Economic Freedom Index in 2024, while the country's Corruption Perception Index deteriorated from 77th in 2022 to 83rd in 2023, out of 180 countries. These metrics underscore the structural challenges confronting Traoré's administration as it pursues ambitious development objectives. The leadership approach adopted by Traoré demonstrates distinct characteristics when compared to contemporary political figures, including those in established democracies. While leaders such as Donald Trump have emphasized nationalist economic policies within the framework of existing institutional structures, Traoré operates within a transitional governance context that allows for more fundamental systemic reforms. This difference in operational parameters creates opportunities for rapid policy implementation while simultaneously raising questions about institutional sustainability and democratic legitimacy. Economic development strategy, resource mobilization, and growth projections. Macroeconomic performance analysis. Recent economic data indicates measurable progress under Traoré's leadership. Burkina Faso's GDP grew from approximately $18.8 billion to $22.1 billion during his initial years in office. GDP growth is estimated at 4% in 2024, 1.7% per capita, driven by the services and agriculture sectors, while growth projected at 4.1% in 2024 and 4.3% in 2025, underpinned by rising extractive and agricultural production according to African Development Bank projections. However, economic performance must be evaluated within the context of significant inflationary pressures. Inflation, while low in 2023, 0.7%, has surged to 5.7% in August 2024, primarily due to rising food prices. This inflation trajectory raises important questions about the sustainability of current growth patterns and the effectiveness of monetary policy coordination. Financial independence strategy. A central component of Traoré's development framework involves reducing dependence on traditional international financial institutions. He has rejected loans from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, representing a significant departure from conventional development financing approaches. However, this policy position requires careful analysis, as research conducted by Dubawa revealed no report of Burkina Faso's president rejecting loans from the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. On the contrary, Burkina Faso received funding from both institutions in 2023 and 2024 respectively. This apparent discrepancy between public statements and documented financial relationships illustrates the complexity of contemporary African economic sovereignty. The rhetorical emphasis on financial independence may serve important domestic political objectives, while practical engagement with international financial institutions continues through existing commitments and programmatic agreements. Agricultural Transformation Initiative. Measurable progress in agricultural production provides empirical support for Traoré's sectoral development priorities. Tomato production in Burkina Faso increased from 315,000 metric tons in 2022 to 360,000 metric tons in 2024. Millet production rose from 907,000 metric tons in 2022 to 975,000 metric tons in 2024, 2022 to 1.1 million metric tons in 2024. Rice production increased from 280,000 metric tons in 2022 to 280,000 metric tons in 2024, 326,000 metric tons in the same period. These production increases demonstrate the potential effectiveness of targeted agricultural investment policies. However, sustainability concerns arise from the broader security context, as these sectors remain dependent on the domestic security and socio-political climates, according to African Development Bank assessments. Social development framework, education and housing initiatives, educational policy implementation. Educational access expansion represents a priority within Traoré's social development framework. However, claims regarding comprehensive educational reform require careful verification. While various online sources have promoted narratives about universal free education implementation, systematic analysis reveals more limited policy changes focused on targeted scholarship programs and fee reductions rather than comprehensive system transformation. The emphasis on technical and vocational education aligns with broader economic development objectives, particularly in engineering, agriculture, and technology sectors that support industrial diversification goals. This strategic alignment between educational policy and economic objectives demonstrates coherent policy planning, though implementation capacity remains a significant constraint. Housing and urban development. The Social Housing Initiative, launched in July 2024, represents a substantial public investment commitment. The construction of 1,000 social housing units located approximately 40 kilometers from Ouagadougou demonstrates concrete policy implementation beyond rhetorical commitments. This program addresses both immediate housing needs and broader urban planning objectives by creating new economic centers outside the capital region. However, the ambitious timeline for universal housing access by 2030 requires enormous resource mobilization and coordination capacity that may exceed current institutional capabilities. Success depends on sustained economic growth, political stability, and effective public administration, factors that remain uncertain in the current transitional context. Security challenges. Critical constraints on development implementation. Humanitarian and security crisis. The security situation in Burkina Faso represents the most significant constraint on development implementation. An estimated 6,000 civilians died in conflict-related violence between January and August 2024 alone. By August, the conflict that began in 2016 had forced over 2.3 million from their homes. According to the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, ACLED, violence caused 7,522 fatalities in 2024, with a large share of civilians. The scale of displacement affects approximately over 2 million people. Nearly 10% of the population are internally displaced, creating enormous humanitarian needs that compete with development spending for limited government resources. This displacement crisis directly undermines agricultural production goals and rural development initiatives. Healthcare system impact security deterioration has created cascading effects across social service delivery systems. The worsening security situation has resulted in the closure of 424 health facilities and an additional 309 operating at minimal capacity, depriving 4 million people of access to healthcare by the end of 2024. This represents more than double the healthcare infrastructure disruption compared to 2022 levels. These healthcare system impacts demonstrate how security challenges create compound development obstacles that extend far beyond immediate violence. Successful implementation of Traoré's development framework requires substantial improvement in security conditions that may be beyond the current capacity of government forces. Regional integration and diplomatic strategy. Alliance of Sahel States formation. Burkina Faso's withdrawal from ECOWAS and the formation of the Alliance of Sahel States with Mali and Niger represents a fundamental shift in regional integration strategy. This diplomatic realignment reflects broader sovereignty concerns while creating new opportunities for resource sharing and security cooperation among countries facing similar challenges. The success of this regional integration model depends on the collective capacity of member states to provide effective governance and economic development. Given the security challenges facing all three nations, questions arise about whether this alliance can deliver practical benefits beyond symbolic sovereignty assertions. International relations recalibration. The complex relationship with international financial institutions illustrates the challenges of pursuing sovereignty-focused policies while maintaining access to necessary development resources. The World Bank supports active operations in several areas, including education, environment, urban and rural development, health, transportation, and agriculture in Burkina Faso, despite public rhetoric about financial independence. This pragmatic approach to international engagement suggests that Traoré's administration recognizes the limitations of complete isolation while pursuing greater policy autonomy. The challenge lies in managing public expectations about sovereignty while maintaining productive relationships with international partners. Comparative analysis. Leadership models and development approaches. Sovereignty-focused governance. The comparison between Traoré's governance approach and leaders like Donald Trump reveals both similarities and fundamental differences in sovereignty-focused policies. Both emphasize national resource control and challenge existing international arrangements, but from vastly different positions of relative power and institutional capacity. Trump's America First policies operated within established democratic institutions and from a position of global economic strength, allowing for unilateral actions with limited domestic consequences. Traoré's approach operates from a position of structural disadvantage, requiring careful balance between sovereignty assertions and practical development needs, institutional innovation versus institutional consolidation. While established democracies like the United States focus on optimizing existing institutional arrangements, Traoré's transitional context allows for more fundamental institutional innovation. This flexibility creates opportunities for rapid policy implementation, but raises questions about long-term institutional sustainability and democratic legitimacy. The effectiveness of these contrasting approaches depends largely on implementation capacity and public support sustainability. Traoré's model requires demonstrable development outcomes to maintain legitimacy, while established democratic leaders can rely on institutional continuity even during periods of limited achievement. Implementation challenges and sustainability concerns. Institutional capacity constraints. The ambitious scope of Traoré's development framework creates significant implementation challenges given existing institutional capacity. Transforming one of the world's least developed economies requires technical expertise, financial resources, and administrative systems that take considerable time to develop effectively. The tension between rapid transformation goals and institutional development timelines represents a fundamental challenge for transitional governments. Success requires balancing immediate results that maintain public support with longer-term capacity building that ensures sustainable progress. Resource mobilization requirements. The scale of proposed development initiatives requires resource mobilization that significantly exceeds current government capacity. Success depends on sustained economic growth, effective tax collection, and productive international partnerships, all of which face significant constraints in the current security environment. If the security situation remains stable, growth could settle at around 4.0%, 1.5% per capita, over 2025 to 2026, according to economic projections. However, this conditional assessment highlights how security improvements represent a prerequisite for sustainable development progress. Future outlook and regional implications. Development model influence. Success in implementing Traoré's development framework could demonstrate that rapid economic transformation remains achievable for African nations willing to pursue bold policy reforms. This would have significant implications for development theory and practice across the continent, potentially inspiring similar approaches Regional security dynamics. The formation of the Alliance of Sahel States represents a potential model for regional integration based on shared security challenges rather than colonial era boundaries or external institutional frameworks. Success could inspire similar arrangements elsewhere, while failure might demonstrate the limitations of South-South cooperation without external support. Burkina Faso is clearly in a transitional period with an uncertain future direction, according to the Bertelsmann Transformation Index 2024. This assessment reflects the broader uncertainty surrounding transitional governance models and their capacity to deliver sustainable development outcomes. Conclusion: strategic assessment and policy implications. Ibrahim Traoré's development framework for Burkina Faso represents a significant case study in contemporary African governance innovation. The combination of resource nationalism, social investment, and regional integration offers an alternative development model that prioritizes sovereignty alongside economic growth. The measurable progress in agricultural production, GDP growth, and infrastructure development demonstrates the potential effectiveness of coordinated government intervention in developing economies. However, the severe security challenges, institutional capacity constraints, and resource mobilization requirements create substantial obstacles to sustained implementation. The success or failure of Traoré's approach will have implications extending far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Success could inspire a new generation of African leaders to pursue similarly ambitious transformation agendas, while failure could reinforce arguments about the limitations of rapid development approaches in challenging environments. For American policymakers and development practitioners, Traoré's model offers valuable insights into the evolution of African governance and the potential for alternative development pathways. Understanding these innovations becomes increasingly important as African nations seek greater autonomy in defining their development priorities and institutional arrangements. The ultimate test lies in whether strategic development planning can translate into improved living standards for Burkina Faso's population while maintaining political stability and security. The next several years will provide crucial evidence about the viability of sovereignty-focused development models in contemporary Africa, with implications for international development policy and regional stability across the Sahel region.